On the upcoming RotoWire Fantasy Baseball podcast, Fred Zinkie will talk about his veteran cuts and why he cut them. We also have big news among NL East pitchers and some who we picked up in the recent FAAB. All next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball podcast. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie. And notice there is no doorknob anymore. Fred Zinkie has removed all doorknobs in his house. No, that's not true. He has a new locale, and this is where we'll see Fred for the next few years.
That's right. So, yeah, there are doorknobs in this house. I just don't have a really comfortable spot to sit in front of any of them. So I'm going to try this radical theory of sitting in front of a desk. We'll see how it goes.
Crazy. So anyhow, very busy week. Let's start off in the NL East. We had big news today coming out of Atlanta. Max Fried is going on the IL with forearm inflammation. They said there's an often forearm inflammation is a precursor to Tommy John surgery. The Braves have said that is not the case with Fried right now, but they also, at least according to David O'Brien's article in The Athletic, they anticipate this being longer than your basic 15-minute or 15-day stretch on the IL. 15-minute would be very short, but 15 days still is not going to be enough. He's going to be shut down completely from throwing for a little bit.
Yeah, so huge impact on Fried's fantasy teams. I was trying to decide when I saw this news. I have 0 Fried shares, but are there circumstances where it would make sense now to cut Fried?
I thought about that and brought it up on the show. I want to see a little bit more first.
Yeah,
I think that's a little hasty.
Yeah. We'll know more by Sunday. His ERA is close to 2 this year. Last year, 2.48 ERA, 1.01 WHIP. I think, How long would we'll play this game then. How long would Fried have to be out for you to cut him? In a 15, a 12, it's almost like the same decision.
2 to 3 months. I put it this way: I've held on to Brandon Woodruff all this time,
who's supposed to be back around the beginning of July.
Right. Maybe. If I'm holding on to Woodruff, I'm going to hold on to Fried. I think they're in the same bracket.
Yeah. So I'd say the same thing. I'd say if he's expected back, say in 2 months, so that's like mid-July, I'll hold on to him because they also often don't meet their timetable, especially pitchers.
That's
true. If they're saying early to mid-July, then that means I can maybe count on him by the end of July. Then I'll hold on to him. If they're talking August, I think I let him go.
Yeah. I think that's probably the fair construction. And I think a lot of it also depends. Do I have 3 other injuries? Do I have no other injuries? Can I afford, if I can afford one if he's like my only stash, or I have maybe 2 stashes tops, then it makes sense. If it's like the 3rd log on the fire, I got to make a decision. It's either him or what the other injured stash, or like, say if I've got Taj Bradley and I'm just, let's say theoretically, not like my AL Tout Wars team where I'm definitely stashing Taj Bradley, it's going to be a harder decision. Then I'm going to really kind of be pushing it a little bit there. The Braves, they had 5 games this week. They were off yesterday. They're off Thursday. This kind of buys them some time. That buys them some time anyhow. Jared Schuster is the likely candidate to get called up and start on Wednesday. Now, keep in mind, they're also down Kyle Wright, which hurts them a little bit. Dylan Dodd and Schuster have both been hit around a little bit whenever they've pitched. They've got Morton. They've got Strider. They've got Elder. They got Elder, Morton, Strider, and then Magic 8 Ball after that. We're looking at Dodd, maybe, and Schuster. Soroka, when he's ready, will slot into one of those spots, obviously. But I think there's some concern about whether Soroka is going to be ready.
Yeah, I think counting on Soroka at this point is tough to do. He is a 5.23 ERA so far this year in AAA. I know ERA doesn't mean everything, and it's just 5 starts. But I don't know, maybe a sign that he's not, fully ready to go, or at least not fully ready to help the Braves. Yeah, we've hit a point where the Braves rotation, which seemed really deep, now you could argue that Bryce Elder is their number 2 starter right now. Charlie Morton's been just okay this year. A little lucky, whips high. You could argue right now that Bryce Elder, who didn't really have a rotation spot when spring training started, is now their number 2 starter for the first, and not for a week, but for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, he's at worst a solid 3, and he's been very good so far.
Yeah.
And that's one of those FAAB bits. You know what? We've talked about a lot of pitchers, young pitchers in FAAB, and whether it's been worth it, the price of these guys. More of them came through this week. We didn't really talk a ton about Bryce Elder. We talked about him because he was going to get a 2-step that week when he first came up. We were excited about him, but it wasn't like we were like, oh, Bryce Elder, he's definitely a top 50 prospect or anything like that.
No, for sure. He's someone who, yeah, was uneven performances in the minors. I was kind of in on him last year when he got called up, but strikeout to walk rate last year wasn't good. The strikeout to walk rate this year is better, but he's not a huge bat misser.
No, he's not.
Tons of ground balls though. So I think that's going to be his calling card right now. Is just a lot of ground balls. He's not not even close to the 174 ERA that he has right now, but he could be a mid threes. I think he could be one of those pitchers with a respectable but not great strikeout rate, and then like something around 8K per nine, and then an ERA in the mid threes. Yeah, for fantasy, he's a solid whatever you want to call him, number 3, number 4, probably once his luck evens out.
Yeah. I'm trying to look to see if there's anybody else still. They've kind of rated their farm system.
Yeah.
A lot of their top guys have been pushed up, right? Or they've been traded. They don't have a whole lot of depth in this farm system. I'm looking at the Braves depth chart, and like you go compare the Braves versus say like the Dodgers, who have like 20 guys in James Anderson's top 300. The Braves only have 7 or in the top 400, excuse me. Schuster's the tops of that, and he's only at 116. So yeah, it's created all this, homegrown talent, and it's already up there at the major league level. So, yeah. I mean, let's not get too critical of them. And keep in mind, too, they lost a slew of guys when they had the GM that got caught cheating, and they had to let guys go. They lost draft picks, too, as a part of that. So they don't have the depth in the farm system that other teams do.
No, they don't. Looking at the Braves so far, though, they're 24-11, which is pretty awesome. They already have a 7-game lead over the Mets, 7.5 over the Marlins. But their division's clustered after that, but that's because every other team has a losing record.
I thought you were going to say the division is a cluster, but that's also true. But
it shouldn't be. Like it shouldn't be. The Mets and the Phillies were both supposed to be quite good this year, and they still might be. We'll see. Like the Phillies have had injuries. The Mets have had pitching injuries. I think with the Braves, their hitting is so good and their bullpen is good that they can kind of work around not great starting pitching until the deadline, at which point they probably add, who knows, maybe someone really good or maybe a couple arms, rotation arms who aren't very good but can eat innings. I can see a path for the Braves still to run away with the division. So they may be willing to kind of just mess around with Dodd and Schuster and see how they do so far. That doesn't mean fantasy managers have to do the same thing. I'm not interested in picking either one of them up in a mixed league right now.
I would watch Schuster start today, but at the same time, if he makes the next start, guess what? It's at Texas on Monday. We don't like Texas. We don't want our mama. Don't let your babies grow up to pitch against Texas. At least, especially at Texas right now. At least it would be a night game. It's Monday, so it can't be a day game. Obviously, day games in Texas. I feel like that's like a big runaway.
Yeah, I think so right now. And Schuster so far, he has one of those strikeout to walk rates where if I wrote it out for you, you'd think I put the numbers backwards.
Yeah.
He has more walks than strikeouts. So you'd be like, oh, Fred, you messed that one up. It's supposed to be 9-5. No, it's not. It is 5-9. So yeah, if someone wanted to pick up Schuster and put them on their bench, sure. In a mixed league, if we ran FAAB tonight, if I knew Schuster was going to be in the rotation, I wouldn't put in. He wouldn't even be in my waterfall. But one good start, and then maybe I'll take another look at him.
He would be in my waterfall in leagues where I don't have to start him right away.
Okay.
Like in the FBC, he would definitely be in there. Because I don't want any part of Boston or Texas. But then like home start against Seattle, maybe. We'll see. I mean, that seems like part of the vast middle for me. Not like at the high end. So I could be wrong about that, but we'll see. Max Scherzer got scratched from today's start with neck stiffness. Comparing it to the neck stiffness that he had back when he was with Washington, where he, remember he missed a World Series start because of this, where he just couldn't function. They hope that he can start this weekend against the Nats. But that hope's a good thing, but it's not a plan.
Yeah, I think the Max Scherzer experience has been pretty uneven for fantasy managers so far. I think when you drafted Max Scherzer at his age, right? Like you knew he's going to turn 39, around the midpoint of the season. Like, I think you knew that this is what you were signing up for. Like, as long as there's not a major injury, but I think you knew you were signing up for some things, neck, back,
Yeah.
something. As long as there's not like an arm, shoulder, and he makes 12 starts this year. Like, but I think you knew last year he made 23 starts. I feel like you knew you were signing up for 25 starts, something like that. And so this is just part of it. We'll see where the neck injury goes from here. But it's been a really uneven experience with him so far, right? Like with the suspension and then coming off the suspension and having a really dismal start after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically with Scherzer, you got one okay start, one bad start, one pretty good start, one 3-inning start where he got ejected, and then a terrible start. And now who knows if you'll get a 0. You might get a 0 from him this week. So this was the risk of drafting. There was a risk with drafting Scherzer and Verlander, and I was in for drafting them. I actually have no shares of either, but that was more draft position than that I was like necessarily avoiding them. But this was the risk of both of them, was that anything more than, like I said, 25 starts was probably a bonus. If you got 25 at their age, you're probably doing well.
I kind of blew past the Verlander injury concerns, and I'll be fine. In labor, at least I did, and he's made one start so far. So it was a decent start. We'll see him in a tougher venue here in Cincinnati this week, so we'll see what happens. The Mets are really reeling right now. They got to have callback David Peterson, who was a big flop, by the way, and a lot of people wanted to use him and Tyler McGill. McGill's been better, although his whip's pretty high. But it's been tough. I mean, the Mets are playing sub 500 ball right now.
Yeah, and this is similar to the Braves, where the rotation, which was supposed to be good, has really kind of gone up in smoke, right? Like McGill was a really cool fantasy prospect, someone people were really interested in a year ago. His skills don't look good at all so far. Yeah, like you said, Peterson is someone people were intrigued with. He hasn't been good at all. And jumping back to those older pitchers, it's interesting how Scherzer had the concerns with age. Verlander had the concerns with age. Jacob deGrom, who just the timing of his injury we never talked about, had the concerns with deGrom.
Next on my list, by the way.
Yeah, he's no spring chicken either, but he's not as old as these guys. But he has the concerns, and now we're just in early May. They will all have missed starts already.
Exactly. Let's talk Jacob deGrom. You got him at a windfall price at pick 60 in labor. You've actually won the benefit of that bargain, even with him currently on the IL.
Yep.
The question is, how many innings does he need to throw for you? Because there's no timetable for his return right now. He's still doing light throwing. He is not throwing from a mound yet.
Yeah, let's say he can be deGrom-like. So he was deGrom-like up till he was gone. 2.67 ERA, 0.76 whip. His ability to have a whip under 1.0 is just unbelievable. Like the last time he had a whip over 1.0 was 2017. I know he's had some injuries, but still, even those are short time frames. You'd think one of those time frames he would have been really unlucky and had a whip over 1. But anyways, I think I took him at pick 60. 120 innings would justify that pick at how well he pitches.
Yeah.
Do you think he even needs that many? Like 120 innings for deGrom would be, at the way he's pitching right now, would be like 180 strikeouts.
Yeah.
And super low ratios.
So, and wins are a category that we play in, though. So 2 wins so far. Yeah. You're a quarter of the way to that 120 goal. You end up with 8 wins and 180 strikeouts. Yeah. And those ratios. Yeah. It would be worth it. Yeah. I mean, that's better than you're getting from any closer, for instance.
It would be like, at that point, I think it would be like not a bad pick. No, it wouldn't be a great pick at that point, but it'd be not a bad pick.
Yeah. All this talk, though, it reinforces that you think you have enough depth. You don't. Big leagues and fantasy. I have a score sheet team only score sheet team that won it last year. I had like 7 or 8 starters. I wanted to get more balance because my rotation was so good. And just try to like maybe go ahead and get more offense on the team. And it's okay. The team's fine. It's like 5 games over 500, but like, injuries happen. And I feel like I probably was a little too hasty in trading away some of my depth and starting pitching. I did pick up a number of guys, but I have like Burns, Strider, Wheeler, Darvish. That's a good start, right? But like Peterson is getting starts for me. Ashcraft was getting starts for me. Mania is just so much for that talk about the increased velocity, by the way, Fred. And Aaron Ashby isn't going to pitch at all this year, so that was a mistake to take a chance on him. Like, I'll get him in May. I'm not. So right now I have 4 starters. I don't have that 5th. Ashcraft was my 5th, and he was good for a while. Just got crushed in his last start though, and slightly injured on the comebacker at the end of that one.
Yeah, I think so. This is something I've been writing about, well, for years, but especially this time of year in trade articles, is that like trying to make trades based on balancing your roster during the first third of the season, I think is a bad plan, unless like if you're giving up overall player value to balance your roster, like trading for need, I think is a bad plan unless you feel like you're also trading for value. If you can find a deal where you're like, oh yeah, I like this guy better than the other guy, and I'm filling a need, perfect. But I think a bad plan from fantasy managers is making trades in the first third of the season where they're like, oh, I've got lots of pitching. I'm going to trade away one of these really good pitchers for a hitter. And the value on the deal is not great, not very good at all, actually, but it fills a need for me. I need a first baseman or something. I usually think that's a bad idea because it's perceived depth at this point in the season. And I've had lots of fantasy teams over the years where, you get off to a start and you're like, oh, I got tons of steals. And all of a sudden your big base stealer, whether it's an Esteury Ruiz type or something, all of a sudden pulls a hamstring and you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't made that trade when I got rid of a bunch of steals because now I don't have any steals. And I think in the first third of the season, you trade for value, even if your roster is unbalanced. And then in the summer, you can try to balance your roster again if it hasn't happened, because a lot of it is perceived balance or temporary balance where you think you've got a lot of pitching or you think you've got a lot of power, you think you got a lot of speed, and then injuries happen and you don't. So,
right. And this was in the off season. It was before our keeper deadline, actually. Right. And that was part of it, but yeah, I was looking over that roster and I got some work left to do. I'm going to have to go add some pitching. Never have enough. Never. And everybody else is grabbing. It's first come, first serve in this league too. So it's been pretty picked over, and it's keeping minor leaguers and all that. So all the top prospects are gone. There's no one that sneaks through. Like Brandon Pfaadt's not walking through that door in that league.
Right.
He's not walking through that door, period, right now. But we'll see. I mean, Pfaadt fell flat, but we'll see what he does tonight against the Marlins. A little bit of a better start, better opponent, better venue too.
Yeah, I'm definitely not giving up yet. I had an article out yesterday of streamers from Monday to Thursday, and I didn't put Pfaadt at the top of the list by any stretch, but I put him decently high to the point where in some leagues, he would make the best sense to stream, depending on your league size. So yeah, I definitely haven't given up yet.
All right. Very good. Very good. We kind of highlighted this podcast about cutting veterans. So we're going to talk about that. But first, a quick note from our sponsor at Rival Fantasy. A new MLB season means it's time for a new kind of daily fantasy baseball. Rival Fantasy is the fantasy platform reinventing the way daily and weekly games are played. And they've brought new games to the ballpark this year that fantasy players won't find anywhere else. Rival Fantasy games include Fantasy Bingo, head-to-head player challenges, and Fantasy Book, where users can select over-unders for 2 to 5 players. With games like this, daily fantasy has never been better. Right now, RotoWire listeners can get a $50 protected first play. That means if you win your first play, you obviously get to keep your winnings. But if you lose your first entry, Rival Fantasy will fully refund you up to $50. Go to play.rivalfantasy.com/signup and use code RotoWireMLB at signup and deposit a minimum of $25 to get your first entry on Rival protected up to $50. Now's the time to step up to the plate and become a Rival today. Welcome to the arena. Also, our podcasts are on the Blue Wire Network. As a consequence, we play their ads real quick here. All right. Thank you very much for your indulgence on that. And thank you for our sponsors for keeping us in business here. So we tease this as you cut 2 veterans, boring veterans, that to create space for, Fabapalooza this past weekend. You cut bait in 15-team leagues, mind you. This isn't like a 10-team league. It's 15-team league, so it's deeper. You said goodbye to both Charlie Blackmon and Mark Canha in respective leagues. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, it's just something that I really wrestled with, where I think that if we just said in a vacuum, like, do Mark Canha and Charlie Blackmon belong on a roster in a in a in a 15 team league? I think the answer is yes. But at the same time, is there any real upside with Mark Canha and Charlie Blackmon?
Right.
I think the answer is no. Like, Charlie Blackmon hasn't hit for a high average in a few years. The last couple years, he's basically like a 15 homer, basically no steals kind of guy. Mark Canha, same thing. Actually, they're pretty similar. As far as they just seem to be on the slow path towards four steals,
Right.
15 homers. So having them on my team, I really wrestled with this. Like, I think they belong on some roster, but on a healthy roster where you're trying to move up in the standings, like if you needed them as an injury replacement, sure. But should they be like roster fixtures, or should they be the kind of guys that you drop and churn while you try to look at Emmanuel Valdez, Michael Garcia? I'm not saying, like, obviously you drop them for Matt Mervis, but I'm even just talking about the general concept of, like, did they belong on your roster full time, or do you churn them? Like, for example, would you drop them for Tyrone Taylor this weekend?
Oh, I'm not big on Tyrone Taylor because I had him last year. But
yeah, me too.
But then again, as I tweeted out about Josh
JJ
Lowe
Bleday,
yesterday, the concept of post-hype sleeper is one that I know and embrace, and yet didn't act upon enough this year. So maybe Bleday, maybe Taylor, Lowe definitely. Kelnick was a different level, but he's in that conversation too. Yes, you should be thinking about that. You should absolutely be cycling these guys. As Joel Hennard said, he tried to cut them both because he needed pitching. These are guys, and you're right. You can recycle them back in when they have a good week, when they have a good schedule, when they have 7 games, or maybe there's something there. But Charlie Blackmon on the road, and if you're not going to use him, I mean, he's kind of taking up a spot, and it prevents you from taking a chance. What if Emmanuel Valdez steals 25 bases this year, and you didn't cut Charlie Blackmon because reasons? Yeah, I honestly think that's fundamental point about fantasy baseball is, always trying to improve your roster, even if it's not necessarily for need. You're talking about this with trades and keeper decisions, but the thing, it also applies to just managing your roster.
Yeah, I think when I cut them, I did it on the assumption that I probably won't get them back, that someone else will probably see the name. Oh, Charlie Blackmon's on waivers. Like, I'll take him and bid a decent amount of money on him, whatever, $60, $70, something like that, and then keep him. And that's okay. So I had to be okay with that. I feel like with the NLDH, which I know this isn't the first year for the NLDH, but now that we have the NLDH established, there are more options each week to stream among players that you think are going to get full. So there's guys like Bleday who are intriguing, or Emmanuel Valdez who are intriguing. There's also just players like Jeff Zimmerman pointed out this on Monday, that Gavin Sheets is a really good streamer this week. They just have a really good schedule of righties. He's got a good spot in the lineup right now with Eloy Jimenez out. So he's a streamer. There were other pitchers.
That's the guy I picked up this week, by the way, is Gavin Sheets.
There you go.
Went 3 sheets to the wind.
Right. So there you go. So there's players like that. There's Rayleigh on the Rays. They had a lot of righties on the docket this week. He could have been streamed in a lot. He was available in a lot of my leagues. There's going to be pitchers. I think Texas plays Oakland later this week. Why not stream guys who are playing against Oakland? I think Robbie Grossman is available in a lot of my leagues. Robbie Grossman's not awesome, but in a series against Oakland, I'd be happy to have him in my lineup. Yeah. So the decision was, am I hurting my team by holding on to these players? Because I know it. Well, I don't know, but I think at the end of the year, Mark Canha and Charlie Blackmon have better stats than Robbie Grossman. But is that the wrong play? Should I be streaming the spot until I find someone who's really good? And in the meantime, if I need to pick up some 1-week rentals, at decent FAAB prices. So I cut them. It's not the move I usually make, but I think it's a move that I need to make more often.
I agree. And what if Emmanuel Valdez or Michael Garcia turns out to be a guy that you keep all year?
Right.
And I that's what we're going for. Either a guy that helps us now for 1 week, or 2, is someone that we can keep all year. And, both of those guys have 25 stolen base potential. That's pretty massive. If it, they also have potential to hit 210 and get sent back down, which is probably even the more likely path. But you got to take these chances. You got to break some eggs. I can't be afraid of messing up. I think that's something that it's a blind spot for me, for most people, and I think it's for the fantasy community. I think it's a blind spot where, there's that, what's the there's a paradox. It applies to life where you hold it. It's something that you have to begin with there, you
Yeah.
value more.
Yeah.
And the concept is escaping me right now. And
I totally know what you're talking about. I agree. Yeah. I think that's what it is. Once you have something, it's of more value to you.
Yes.
To keep it. I've always said that I think the top 2/3 of your roster that you keep through easy schedules, bad schedules, whatever. A week you got to put them on the bench. But the bottom third, at least the bottom quarter, is rotational in most, and outside of the AL and NL onlys. Like the bottom quarter, the bottom third is rotational. I don't think I always live by it as much as I practice, as much as I preach it. So I'm trying to correct that. And I just think with guys like Canha and Blackmon, like they're so far past the point of they're not post-night sleepers anymore. They're just old. They're just guys in their mid-30s who they're
just sleepy.
Yeah, they just don't have it anymore. and again, like if Blackmon's on waivers a week that the Rockies are home all week, I'm in. I'm happy to try to pick him up. I mean, so is everyone else. Everyone else is going to try to pick him up. Canha, same thing. They were going to Cincinnati this week, so I thought about keeping him. But there were some exciting players on waivers. Canha's not going to. He has one season with 20 homers. He's never had more than 70 RBIs. He's not going to. He's got one season with more than 7 steals. He's not going to have a big year. It's just so incredibly unlikely. And I felt like holding these players, especially having more than one of them on a few of them on teams. We talked about in March about drafting boring rosters, but I think that should only be the first 20 rounds or so, the first 18 rounds, maybe not even the first 15 rounds. Then I think it's time to get maybe up a little aggressive with upside. I think I can do a better job with that. I think I can do a better job with that in drafts, but I think I can also do a much better job with it on waivers. If Michael Garcia is no good, I guess I just drop him in a couple weeks and
now the only cost is he's compiling his stats on your active lineup.
Yeah,
but
sure.
So be it. Again, you're trying to improve, and you're gonna break some eggs as it goes.
Yeah, it's not like these other two guys were lighting it up for me, anyways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mr. Grouch chimes in. He cut Brian Anderson, not the announcer, but the player for the Brewers, and took a chance on Christopher Morel. Perfect example of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I would. Now Anderson's been he's been okay. It depends on league size.
He's had his stretches. That one series against the Mets was really nice.
In a 12, I think that's totally. In a 12, I think that's a great move. In a 15, in a 15, if Brian Anderson's my worst player, then I'm doing really well. So sure, go for it. Yeah, I think that's exactly the type of move. I don't know. There's a segue. I don't know how Chris Morel is going to do as far as playing time goes, but he's exactly the type of player where if the Cubs are going to play him regularly, he can bring up post fantasy stats in bunches. Last year, homers plus steals, 26 of them in 113 games, and he's been playing well in AAA to start the year. Yeah, I think he's exactly the type of player that you chase. Lots of strikeouts, could be a low batting average. Could be a real difference maker. He's someone who I'll be in on next weekend.
So, except for in labor, where I held on to Morel the whole time. But
hello, unlimited IL that allows you to do those things.
Exactly. And unlimited players getting hurt. However, I found out about the move after the game started, so I didn't get him active this week, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it's all right. At least I have him. And I get to see how he does. Now, hopefully it's not his best week and then I'm screwed, but that happens too. On a related note, Nico Horner did leave with an injury. It doesn't look to be too serious is what we're reading. Imgo King said, or Maga King says, do I have to make room for Judge, who's coming off the lineup, is in the lineup today, coming off the IL today? Do I drop Horner or Chapman? I'm assuming that's Aroldis and not Matt, because you're never dropping Matt Chapman. Are you dropping I drop Aroldis Chapman in a format that thin. If those are your two options to drop, I'm dropping Chapman, who hasn't pitched well the last couple of times.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That would be the drop. If it's Matt Chapman, you definitely. It's interesting because he mentions Horner or Chapman. Nico Horner's really been really good so far this year.
Yeah.
Which
So
makes
you're
me wonder
obviously
if it
not
is
dropping
Nico
him.
Horner or Matt Chapman. Like, is it a really small league?
Mhm.
If it was that small of a league, I guess you'd have to drop Horner. Although I love Horner, I wouldn't want to drop him, but you can't drop Matt Chapman.
Right.
Yeah,
So I'm assuming it's a Roldis.
I hope so.
Yeah, so all that. Morgan asked a couple twin questions. I'm going to put them all together as one here. Alex Kirilloff, does he belong in that post-hype sleeper convo? Just got the call back up. They sent down Trevor Larnach, who was in the post-hype sleeper combo earlier when he was batting fourth for the Twins. Now he's batting in Rochester, or no, St. Paul. He's no longer. They're not in Rochester. They're in St. Paul now. But regardless, he's down there.
He does belong in the post-hype sleeper combo. I'm not that confident in him. Just a lot of wrist injuries, and I'm just not sure what kind of hitter he's going to be now. But absolutely, he belongs in the post-hype sleeper conversation. I was trying to think of play. So I would much rather have Chris Morel, but I think everybody would. That's why
Mm-hmm.
that's why
Yeah, he was banging down the door.
Yeah, that's why Kirilov's a post-hype sleeper, because there's no hype.
Yeah.
Would you just drop the Mark Canha types to try
Yes.
Kirilov?
Yes, I would.
Right.
I would. Yeah, especially and if he gets a chance to bat in the middle of that Twins lineup. Trying to look to see if the Twins have posted today already or not, just to see where he's hitting. They have posted. He's batting cleanup. So yes, against Michael Walker, no less. I might go to Yahoo Friends and Family and pick him up right now, unless you have already, or unless he's already rostered. But there'll be a race to see who gets there first. But I think you'll win that race, Fred. Do you have? I mean, how my team's pretty bad in that league. So
same here. My team. Do you remember we did the Yahoo Friends and Family draft, and at the end we talked about how my team in those projected standings had run away with it?
Yeah,
that was the kiss of death.
Good times.
I have all these pitchers in that league that have just been like awful. Like I'll be interested to do it's too early to do, but just an analysis on the return on early round starting pitchers this year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the misses are on my Yahoo. Especially even the non-injury related misses are on my Yahoo Friends and Family team.
So I just picked up Kirilov in that league, by the way.
While I was giving that detailed explanation of my team, you snuck over.
Yes, I did. Now I'm going to check on Christopher Morel while we're talking too, because why not? Oh, Mobaka's already got him. So all right, 1 for 2 as far as in podcast pickups go. But that league for me was the FOMO draft. That was I don't have any Jordan Walker. Okay. I don't have any Anthony Volpe yet. Yeah. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least he's running, I guess, but yeah, it hasn't really worked out too well.
No. I wondered, I put him in our notes for today. Like, do you think there's a chance that Anthony Volpe goes back to the minors at some point?
Yeah, there's a chance.
Like his OPS is 627. It's probably got to go lower than that before 627 is bad, but not humiliating. Like, but when you're 627 right now, a bad week, it could be 550.
Could.
And all of a sudden, maybe you're a candidate to go to the minors for a while.
Yeah. The Yankees but it's not, because Peraza just went on the IL for the Yankees. So unless they're really confident in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, they're going to just roll with Volpe.
I think the decision wouldn't be about Kiner. Well, Kiner-Falefa is 431 OPS so far this year.
Right.
That's incredibly bad.
First.
He hasn't played much, but
he's playing outfield. At least he has been, which is just sad and embarrassing.
You're right. The Yankees are probably banged up enough that Volpe gets a longer, opportunity. But there could be a point in time where the decision isn't about what's best for the Yankees. It's about what's best for Volpe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they felt like if he had a really bad stretch of, say, a couple more weeks, the OPS started to dip down towards 500, and they said, this just isn't good for him. Maybe at that point he's had, for example, in his last 3 games, he's had 8 strikeouts. Like if that trend continued, maybe they look at just what's best for the player. If he's getting out all the time, it's probably not best for the team either. You just use Kiner-Falefa because you're thinking big picture. Volpe maybe goes down for 3 weeks, gets his stroke back, comes back up. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But
the Yankees are 10 games behind the Rays already.
Yeah.
Which is just astounding because they're over 500. But at the same time, I mean, they're really they're really in a tough spot right now. They're really trying to you look at that lineup. No, they got Judge back today, so that helps it a little bit. But no Stanton, like LeMahieu. Okay, fine. You look. I for the Tout Daily contest, I decided I'm going to stack Yankees against Drew Rucinski and the A's bullpen too, for that matter. And I was struggling to find 4 or 5 hitters that I like, and maybe there's a point there. Maybe you shouldn't do that. But I plowed right through it anyhow and still found 5 of them. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. It's not an easy decision to do. It's not an easy way to kind of go. But at the same time, it was an affordable stack, I guess, is the flip side. You don't get an affordable stack against the A's that often.
Was Judge in the stack?
Of course.
Okay. So, beyond him, I was going to say he might hurt the affordability a bit. But, Torres, Rizzo against a right-hander, that's good. I don't know if you got Harrison Bader into the stack or Volpe.
I did.
Jose Trevino.
I did get Bader, Trevino, Rizzo, Judge. I think I actually got one more guy too. And it's a bold move, Cotton.
Yeah.
Glaber. It's Glaber.
Yeah. Glaber's one of the few Yankees who's met or exceeded expectations so far this year.
Yeah, but almost all that was early, I think, too. Although he did homer this weekend once at least.
Do the Yankees make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they find a way. I don't know at whose expense, but I mean, it's crazy. The entire AL East is all in, discussing this right now. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I actually think the AL East is going to get all of the wild card spots this year.
Yeah,
I think Toronto, Baltimore, and another AL East team. Whether it's
the Yankees Boston versus the Yankees, you're talking then.
Yeah, well, I'm not ruling out obviously Seattle coming back. Maybe I'm being a little too hasty. Like maybe Seattle comes back, maybe Houston comes back. And
won't be the White Sox.
It won't be a 2 Central teams. It's whether whether 2 West teams can qualify for the postseason. And maybe I'm being a little too hasty. I don't think it's as much. Maybe I'm being too hasty, but I don't think it's really a lock that the Yankees, or even close to it, the Yankees make the playoffs. They're really banged up. Like the rotation's banged up. The lineup's not scary. It's okay. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's going to turn out well for them this year.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about your fascination with the other side of that Yankees-A's game and Ryan Noda.
I don't know. Nobody's interested in Ryan Noda except for me, I feel like. Yeah. I keep getting him in leagues. I got outbid for him in labor because I bid $1, and because I got him everywhere else for basically nothing, and someone else bid $1, and I lost on the tiebreaker. Which, whatever. If I really wanted him, but when I looked at Ryan Noda, he was old for his levels. Like he's 27 years old right now. So, but last year in AAA, 25 homers, 20 steals, 869 OPS. The year before in AA, 29 homers, 904 OPS. He has a tremendous walk rate throughout the minors and with the A's. This guy so far has been an on-base machine. He's got 21 walks in 109 plate appearances. His OBP is 404, and that's with a 244 batting average. I'm not into Ryan Noda as putting down big bids on him, but I seem to keep putting down 1% bids on him and getting him because no one else seems to want him. His BABIP's a little high right now at 383. Anyways, I don't know. I just think he's kind of interesting, and there's obviously lots of playing time available on the A's for anyone who can play well. And I got to feel like the A's have to look around at that 404 on base percentage for now and think we got to get this guy in the lineup. He's also a platoon guy, but I think he's an interesting streamer, just a guy you can use against right-handers.
Yeah, and I think it's a good reminder to separate the cruel, corrupt ownership of the A's versus the baseball people who are still trying. Noda sounds like you're 20 years ago prototypical Moneyball player, undervalued. Brent Rooker too, who's leading baseball in OPS, I think, still, which is, hey, we're now we're in week 7 of the season now. I mean, it's a pretty late in the season, late to be early. It is on the early part of the season, but I mean, it's a pretty good extended run.
Yeah, I mean, Noda that's what I thought of, is the old-fashioned Moneyball guy. His career on base percentage in the minors is 407. Like, you don't see a lot of guys even in the minors, with a career on base percentage over 400. His OPS in the minors is almost 900 in his career. Again, I'm not saying he's awesome, but same with Rooker. Like, there is fantasy value to be had on these weaker teams. There are
Yeah.
players who, because
Ruiz, obviously,
right. And the A's lineup so far this year, like, it's not good, but it's not 30th, in OPS or
Yeah.
in WRC plus, or however you want to evaluate them. Like they're not a good lineup, but yeah, they're right now 24th in OPS. Not the worst. Like
They put a hurting on the Royals over the weekend. That's
How
for
about
sure.
this? They're ahead of Seattle and ahead of Houston.
That the latter one is the one that I think are going to shake some people there a little bit,
Yeah,
because
those are
Houston
two
has been
teams
really sneakily bad offensively. We've talked
yeah,
about it here.
yeah.
I probably rambled on about it for a couple of times or there. I forget where I've talked about it. I know on XM probably I mentioned it too, but obviously Jose Abreu has been a disaster. Alex Bregman has been a huge disappointment so far. They're still without without Altuve at second base. So that's
Brantley. Yeah.
Brantley,
Yeah.
Brantley, whatever.
Not that Brantley, yeah, he doesn't make a big deal, but
but it's
but they could
whoever's
use some help.
replacing him. They
Yep.
have a cipher offensively at catcher. I
Yep.
mean, now we're talking 5 spots in the lineup. Go figure that they're
Yep.
24th. There's only so much that Yordan and Tucker can do.
Yep. Chas McCormick was like almost an afterthought for them at the start of the season. And then he was just on the IL, and they actually missed him because he was hitting leadoff before he went on the IL and doing okay. They actually kind of missed him while he was gone, and they shouldn't be in a position where they miss him. So, I mean, you start to look at how teams are actually doing versus how they were perceived to be doing. Oakland is not a team that's great, but they're also, like I say, like their offense is good enough that you don't say, "Oh, I don't want any part of that lineup." I mean, if there's any lineup right now you don't want any part of, it's kind of in Cleveland. They're last in OPS by a mile so far,
Which is amazing.
right?
Because this is what we expected out of Cleveland last season,
Right.
and they kind of and granted, it's been super cold in Cleveland for a lot of their games. Things can turn around, but they've been a disaster offensively so far this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I mean, I wouldn't say if a prospect was called up to Cleveland, or if a Cleveland player who I would normally like was dropped to waivers, I wouldn't say, "Oh, he's on Cleveland. That team is so pathetic. I don't want any part of that lineup." I'd take him on the assumption that lineup will turn around. So, I don't know if there is a lineup right now that I feel so negative about that I wouldn't consider an intriguing player on that team. If you take out Cleveland, there's 100 OPS points, which is a lot, but not like a crazy amount, separating about 25 major league teams. So there's the 100 points of OPS. Like I said, it's significant, but there aren't really teams sitting around a 600 OPS, which sometimes we do see at this point this year, other than Cleveland.
Right.
Everybody else is 660, 670 or higher. So, I think it's just a good reminder that there is fantasy value to be had from the Oaklands, the Washingtons, the Cincinnati's, right?
Yeah.
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 So, and then again, Ryan Noda might not turn out to be much, but I just think he's intriguing with his ability to get on base. He could score runs.
Yeah, it's funny how much Tampa is still separated themselves from the pack. Though, like if you look at WRC plus or WOBA,
Yep.
I mean it's not even close. I mean
Nope.
they're killing everybody in like home runs hit. I mean Texas is getting close in terms of runs scored. In fact, they may have even scored. They might be scoring more runs per game, believe it or not.
Yep,
which is just remarkable when you think about it there. But still, like WOBA, it's Tampa by a mile. WRC plus, it's Tampa by a mile, but
OPS
Cleveland
is
is
60 points up on the next team.
WRC plus is park adjusted. Colorado is second worst behind Cleveland. Colorado got shut out yesterday in Pittsburgh by Mitch Keller. Cincinnati, Detroit are right down there. Oh yay, go Reds. But Oakland, I mean, they're 17th, and that's park adjusted. So that shows that they've been a little bit, if they played in a neutral park, they'd be a little bit better all along.
I wondered for Oakland, and I don't have the time right now to put in like a huge resource or her huge research project on this, but I wondered with Oakland if their pitching staff has been so incredibly bad that they spend the middle and late innings of a lot of games facing the soft underbelly of teams' bullpens, and that may not be true at all. But I
Even
just
because they're
wondered.
already down 8 runs. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
could see. Yeah.
When your team has a 7.26 ERA,
Hmm.
7.26, like they're a run and a half behind even the next team. When your team has a 7.26 ERA, like you have fallen behind early,
Hmm.
guaranteed in a lot of games. And I wondered in how many of those games, like did they fall behind, like 7-1 or something in the first 4 or 5 innings, and then they just get some mop up guys and then they can tack on a few runs.
I
But
think
it
it's
doesn't
some of that
matter.
is their bullpen is blowing these games open
It's
though
true.
too,
It's true.
or
It's true.
blowing leads in many
I'll
cases.
look up ERA by starter and see how bad they are, because you're right. That would be a better indicator.
Yeah,
But either way, even if that's happening, it's
yeah.
still happening. You still get the fantasy value. Oh no, their rotation ERA is 7.72.
Okay, never
So
mind.
they're basically
They're bad all around.
not
Well,
far off a run.
Fuji, the guy from Japan,
Yeah, yeah, yep,
I should really know his name properly, but he's been awful. He was awful as a starter, and now he's no longer starting. So there's that.
yeah,
It's been bad all along.
yeah,
JP Sears is interesting, although he just ran out of gas last night. But he actually, and then of course Mason Miller's interesting, but now he's hurt, which is just brutal for them and for fantasy. But
yeah.
just make it stop. I can't.
I will say I'll look at Oakland hitters. I'll look at any team's hitters. I will not. I
Mhm.
didn't watch AP Series. I will not look at Oakland pitchers. I don't
Why?
think so.
Yeah,
I
I don't
just
blame you. It's
ha-
because you're not going to get the win. So yeah.
there is a team with a worse WHIP among their starting pitching staff than Oakland's. Better ERA, 6.40, but a worse WHIP than Oakland. There is a team with a 171 WHIP among their starters. Do you want to take a guess on what that team is?
Royals,
Nope.
Reds.
Yep.
Yay.
171
Yay.
among their starters. And think about it, that's a team with 3 starters that were quite coveted as intriguing. I wouldn't even say
Well,
sleepers. Like,
Ashcraft's disaster on Sunday
yep,
did a lot towards that. And Lodolo's been, really bad lately
yep,
too,
yep,
unfortunately.
yeah. So between like Lodolo, Green, and Ashcraft were all pitchers that people were excited to draft. And yeah,
Ashcraft was a very late excitement. People weren't
yep, he
excited at the
was.
beginning of
He
draft
was
season. In
for
fact,
sure.
most people were like doubters on that one. So those people were probably justified a little bit there.
He's
But
actually been the best whip. He's got a 133 even with
yeah,
the blow up. So
yeah.
he's helping the 171. If it wasn't for him, you're right, it'd be even worse. Lodolo is 175 on the whip so far.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he's been really rough the last 3-4 weeks.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's been pretty awful. Other pitchers we could talk about here.
Yep.
Dylan Cease,
Oh,
50% walk rate now. I mean, I should say not 50% walk rate. That would be a record, but he's walked 20 guys in like 40 innings. He's been
yeah.
really bad, and he got knocked around hard by the Royals. Last 3 or 4 outings have been pretty bad for Dylan Cease.
Yeah. And I don't know if it is all a walk rate thing, really. Sure, overall, like his walk rate, it's up a bit from last year, but I mean, he walked 5 in his second start. That
Hmm.
second start of the year was 5 innings of 1 run ball. Um, he had one other start where he walked 5. That was 6 innings, 2 earned runs. So that's not what's killing his ERA. In his last few starts, he's given up 6 earned runs, 4 earned runs, 7 earned runs. In those starts, 3 starts, 7 walks. Not good, but not atrocious. What's happened with Dylan Cease is the strikeout rates come way down. So the first
Hmm.
couple starts, 10 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts. Since then, we're seeing a lot of 5. We got a 3, got a
Yeah,
couple 6s. But the immense strikeout rate that he had last year, we aren't seeing that right now. I worried. I have 1 share of Cease. It's an important share to me, unfortunately. I took him because like just that tier of like low level aces was gone, and he was kind of the last man standing. So he was the
that
highest
happened to
guy
me
on
in
my
yogurt.
list. I took him.
That's yeah.
I I worried about him going into the year because I felt like he was the perfect candidate to struggle with the new rules
Yeah.
because he walks so many batters that he was really reliant on batted ball luck and strikeouts, to get out of innings. And I was worried with the shift rules and the less batted ball luck for him that the walks would start to be a bigger problem. More of those would come around to score. I'm not totally seeing that exactly when you break it down start by start, but I am worried about Dylan Cease, not to the point where I'm taking him out of my lineup, but to the point where I wish I didn't draft him.
Yeah, I
I
have
think
him
I'm
in
leaving him
yogurt.
in though.
Got him at pick 58, I think. I'm like, yeah, I thought I'm getting a good price on him at least. I don't love him, but
Yeah.
hey, it's a
Yeah.
good price. It's kind of like you with deGrom.
Yep.
Yay. No,
When I took him, I didn't feel good about it. And
right.
then it was a draft shortly before the season. And then remember on opening day, there were all kinds of blow-ups. And he came out at night, was one of the
Dealt.
last games of opening day, maybe
Yes.
the last game of opening day, 6 1/3, 10 strikeouts, no walks, 1 earned run. And I was like, okay, this Dylan Cease pick is fine. All right. My projections. Yeah, I think I don't know. We'll see how this whole Cease thing ends up. I tend to not fully scratch guys off my list, even if I'm nervous about them. I just try not to project them too aggressively. I'm starting
Right.
to wonder if maybe I should scratch some guys off my list. I didn't like him. I still projected him. I still took him when that group of aces was ending. I don't know. I wish I just went down to the next tier, or
Yeah,
just
sure.
didn't pick a starter that
Yeah, I don't
round.
blame you. I
Yeah, I think it
don't
was
blame you at
round
all.
3 or 4, and I didn't have a starter yet. And it was round
Mhm.
4. It was round 4 and a 15-teamer, and I didn't have a starter yet. And I was just like, I got to take a starter. Well,
Yeah.
not if he pitches like Dylan Cease is.
No,
Yeah,
unfortunately, you
and that
can't do
team,
that.
everything's fallen apart with that team. Really, that was the other thing. I thought the White Sox would be okay this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, I thought that I did the same. In fact, I was almost borderline bullish on the White Sox, and
Yeah,
boy, was I wrong about that. And the thing is, like, when the top guys don't do anything, they just don't have the depth behind it at all.
yeah,
Like Kolas did nothing so far.
yeah,
When Moncada's been hurt and they've gotten nothing from his replacements. Anderson was out; they got nothing from uh, uh,
yeah,
the Sosa, I think, is the kid that they called up, and he did nothing.
yeah.
So it all adds up after a while. The funny thing is, the team where I have Cease is actually pretty good. It's TGFBI. I'm 23rd overall, but I'm third in my
Okay,
league, which
okay.
tells you something about our league. But it's a pretty damn good league.
Yeah,
And on that league, yeah, I got Cease with at 4.13. Yeah, so pick 58. I got him at there. I went J Rod, Semien, Clase, Cease, and then Eloy. So and Gunnar Henderson, who I saw some chatter about in the forum earlier there too. I'm holding on him, by the way. How is this team any good? I guess everybody else has disasters out there too.
yeah. That's what it is. And I mean, the middle rounds are often where you make or break your fantasy team because, like you said, everybody has some disasters at the top. So if you've got some Esther Ruiz types who we already talked about, but some players you took in the middle rounds that are really paying off, that or some late rounders, right? Then
Yeah, like Brandon Marsh was way over
yeah,
his skis. He's kind of regressing now, but
I do not like Brandon Marsh going forward. I'll be honest with you. When you dive in on his
oh, I
advanced
agree.
stats, like it doesn't look. He in trading leagues, he's I'm at the point with Brandon Marsh where I'm resisting writing about him again. It's like I go to read a Yahoo article and I think who should fantasy managers trade away? Brandon Marsh. No, you already wrote about him. Stop it. You can't write about Brandon Marsh again. Like you have to leave. I feel like I have a rule for myself. I have to leave like 3 or 4 weeks in between mentioning a player. And Brandon Marsh is like at the top of that list right now where he just screams, try to trade him away,
Yeah.
at a higher value in a league like
Well, you already
TGFBI.
dropped his older brother and Charlie Blackmon too, so there's that.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. Dustin May is one of my other guys where I feel the same way about where you just look at the advanced stats and you're like, okay, your 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio just does not scream mid 2s ERA, sub 1 whip. Like something's got to give here, but I can't write about him too often.
Yeah,
So if you
exactly.
have those players in a non-trading league, you just keep rolling them out there, and
Yep.
regression's probably coming, but you just keep rolling them out there and hope that when it comes, it just doesn't hit too hard.
Indeed.
Because we do see sometimes where these players just outperform their advanced stats for the whole season or chunks of the season.
Well, Dustin May is always. I'm glad you brought him up
He
because
has a lot. Yeah.
he's like that's been his MO all along, and
Yep.
he throws so hard. You're like
Yep.
at some point, the strikeouts are going to come. But we always said that about Thor too, right? I mean, I kind of feel like they're it's like Thor Jr. here in a way, and yeah, also have had the TJS too for that matter. Keep in mind, still with May, I mean, he came back late last season.
Yep.
And so I feel like there's still perhaps another level left in him. And he's getting good results otherwise. I think he might break that mold just a little bit. I probably wouldn't be looking to trade away Dustin May right now.
Well, it's all, yeah. I mean, it's all into like what you can get for someone, and the Dodgers do have some pitching magic for sure. It's just his strikeout rate this year is significantly lower than it was in
It
previous
is.
seasons, and the walk rate's not the highest it's been, but pretty close. It's just a 198 BABIP with these shift rules. I just feel like is not even close to sustainable. So it's
Yeah.
more when I write him in the articles, it's more like if you can sell Dustin May as like this guy's the next really good Dodgers pitcher who's going to have an ERA of 3, then do it. If the person you target for a trade says, you know what, this guy's ERA is going to be 4 in no time, then that's not your trade. Then just keep May and just keep rolling with him.
And the trickier part too about this is you got to replace him with somebody, right? What are
That's
you
right.
trading him for?
Yeah.
And who steps into his spot? You got to have 9 pitchers, and
Yeah.
in most formats there. And are you going to be hard pressed to? We're having such a hard time filling these spots right now. It's like I know that's like intellectually that's the right thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, are you going to get a good? What's a good buy low for Dustin May right now?
That's a really good question. Let me see if I can find someone with a. While I'm trying to find someone who's a good buy low, I will say that my good friend Scott Pianowski, who he always likes to, one of his lines that I love, he'll say, like, don't offer me, and we're in a lot of industry leagues with him. He'll say something like, don't offer me terrible trades. I have the internet too.
Yeah.
Is one of his lines, which is great. And you're right. He's right. In an industry league, offering someone Dustin May as though he's an ace, like the other person's going to say, like, this guy's not an ace. But when I write, and you're writing for people in home leagues and more in random Yahoo leagues and things like a lot of people will look at Dustin May's mid-2 ERA, sub-1 WHIP. He's on the Dodgers and say, this guy's the next big
stud.
thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And he once was the next big thing. So funny you mentioned Yahoo, because while we were talking, I pulled up Yahoo, one of our leagues, and because one of the things you have is the trade market, trades that have actually happened today with him. So here are the one-on-one. There's been 3 1-for-1 trades with Dustin May, and they're all for hitters. Dustin May for Kyle Schwarber, Dustin May for Nick Senzel, and Dustin May for Estuary Ruiz. Now I got to wonder if there's a draft pick in there or something that we don't see, or like a keeper salary. But even then, I mean, I'm hard pressed to see that one being fair, unless there's some other consideration we don't see there. But it's kind of interesting though.
The Schwarber one is in a regular league.
That's a snap.
The Schwarber one is a really interesting one where, yeah, like especially if you found a team that needed pitching and had some power, and you're like, hey, this Schwarber guy's hitting 188, like he's killing your batting average. I've got a really good pitcher here in Dustin May, right? Like if you don't ask, you're not going to get. I was more looking for pitchers that I would swap him 1-for-1 with.
And I didn't see a single one of those trades, so that's kind of funny.
No, but there you go. There's the type of one. Like maybe you're going for power and you're going to offer pitching, and instead of trading a better pitcher with worse ERA, worse WHIP so far, you try to give them Dustin May before what, in my opinion, the regression eventually comes, and all of a sudden you come away with Kyle Schwarber. I don't think anyone in an industry league is trading Kyle Schwarber for Dustin May. But
it's a snap call. I mean, it's like, yeah, absolutely.
But how much longer would Kyle Schwarber have to hit one? If Kyle Schwarber was hitting 188 in July and Dustin May still had the same ratios, could you make that trade? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
You could. Yeah.
Maybe. So, yeah. Again, if you don't ask,
right,
you're never going to know.
PJ 332 asks about Alex Bregman and if he's a cut. I don't think he's a cut, but I mean, at least I wouldn't ever cut him in a league. If I had him, I don't have him anywhere because I also said not to get him at the asking price. He's hitting right now. He's hitting 205, 4 homers, 16 RBI, 20 runs. Part of the Houston Malaise, 0 stolen bases. That's just not part of his game anymore. Here are the 1-for-1 trades with Alex Bregman. Justin Steele. That's an interesting buy. Sell high, buy low on both. You get both parts of that.
There's another one that's similar to that Schwarber trade, right? You take a pitcher who's massively increased his value in recent weeks and trade him for an established veteran hitter who's off to a slow start.
And then there's one other hitter for hitter trade, and that's Bregman for DJ LeMahieu, which
I'll
Yeah,
take Bregman. I am not a Bregman guy.
I'm not either.
I just see there's no steals. He hasn't hit for a high average since 2019.
Hmm.
So there's two categories already where he's not going to be special. Um, I'm just not a Bregman guy. Houston's offense doesn't look like they're going to be great this year. Maybe they'll be okay when Altuve comes back, but I have a hard time seeing that offense being great now. So I don't know. I'm in a 10-team league. I could see cutting Bregman.
Yeah.
In a 12 with a really small bench, maybe. I
Yeah.
wouldn't rule it out. In a 12 with
Yeah.
a really small bench, depending on your needs, maybe you have another third baseman on the roster. So, like maybe you have Devers and Bregman was your corner infielder, something like that. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to start streaming the spot and try to find someone who's really good. So I would say, yeah, I'd be open in shallower leagues to cutting Bregman. And again, it
I
wouldn't be cutting.
wouldn't. I wouldn't cut
You
him,
wouldn't, eh?
but
In
no,
a 10, you would.
no, I don't think I would.
Still wouldn't.
I mean, I gotta think Houston's lineup's going to be better, and then with that, he'll be better. But I mean, I would cut Abreu. I think that's the difference.
Yep.
I'm more inclined to say yes on cutting Abreu than I am Bregman.
Oh yeah, yeah. Me too. Me too. It would more be, yeah. I don't know. In it, like I said, in some of those Yahoo type leagues, like a 12 with a 3-man bench or something, and there are plenty of those leagues out there. I don't know. I think I could at least look at it. I was trying to think of someone off the top of my head, but it would that I would cut him for.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like I wouldn't cut him for those prospects, for example, that we were just talking about. Would you have cut him for Matt Mervis?
Yes, I would. I was
There you
just
go.
going to say Matt Mervis is
Yep.
who I would cut him for.
So
Although
there, yeah,
James Anderson was on our Sirius XM show today, and he says he's a little afraid that they might platoon him, platoon Mervis. But I think Mervis has got enough of an upside that it's worth it to me.
yep,
So that's probably my line right there.
yeah,
If and when the Reds call up Christian Encarnacion Strand, that's another guy that's in
yep,
that sort of neighborhood. I feel like Abreu is pretty close to Charlie Blackmon territory. You just drafted him sooner, but he's
yeah.
not going to run,
Nope.
and he hasn't hit a homer since like July. So I'm slightly exaggerating, but I think he had like 3 homers the second half of the season last year, and none so far this year. What makes him any different? And he doesn't run, and he's at a non-scarce position. What about Jose Abreu makes him, less cuttable than Bregman? He's older than Bregman.
Yep.
He doesn't play the right position. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Abreu was 2 years ago was pretty awesome, 117 RBIs, but yeah, I think Abreu's another guy in a 10, he's a cut for sure. And in a 12
Mhm.
with a small bench, I think you just cut him and you start moving on. You don't cut him for Ryan Noda, for example, but you cut him for Mervis, you cut him for someone who you're really intrigued with, or you cut him and just start streaming the spot with players with good matchups. But I don't know. I don't see Bregman as having that much really more upside than Abreu. I don't see Bregman hitting for average. I don't see him stealing bases. I don't see him hitting for a lot of power. Like he hasn't shown a lot of power. He hit 23 homers last year
Yeah.
in 155 games.
So the point is, we don't like
12.
either of them that
We
much,
don't,
really.
which is
Yeah.
kind of like saying we don't really like the Astros
Yeah.
offense. I'd
Maybe.
say right now we
Yeah.
like
And
Yordan
there's not a whole
Alvarez.
lot of help on the way either. Is the funny thing.
I agree. I don't think Brantley's going to be much help. Like he'll play, but they've got Alvarez, they
Prospects
got
they don't
Tucker, and
have.
eventually they have Altuve. They got
Yeah.
3 good players. The rest is I don't know. Like you could cut Bregman or Abreu and regret it, but I think it's a risk that I would take in some of the leagues. Like I was trying to look for a third baseman that I would cut him for. Josh Young from Texas.
I would take Young over Bregman.
Okay.
I would.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, Young could hit 35 homers this year. He might hit 220, but I just what's the upside with Bregman now? And it's team oriented because let's face it, 2019 is over.
Yep.
Happy fun ball is gone. I mean, it's a happier, funnier ball than last year, but it's not 2019 either.
Yeah. So Young's owned or rostered in 75% of Yahoo leagues. Bregman's 96.
Yeah.
I know. So there's one that I would at least consider just off the off the top of my
This
head.
has the risk of being that this didn't age well podcast, by the way. But we'll see about that.
Nobody listens at this point. This is when you can really throw the ball projections.
Yeah.
How about Gunnar Henderson, who's off to a terrible start? Would you rather pick up Gunnar Henderson? He's younger and hope that like he gets his act together, or just stick with Bregman?
I do have Henderson and Yogurt, and I think one of my mains, and I'm not considering parting ways with him. Let's put it that way. He's such a good prospect. I don't know. Prospects start slowly sometimes. Go back to the whole post-hype conversation. But then again, post-hype usually happens after a period of introspection and change, not just boom. Sometimes players do get it in season. It might take a while, though. That's the tough part. And the problem, too, with Gunnar Henderson is that the Orioles have like a surfeit of infield prospects just, bursting at the seams, waiting to come up.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. Yeah, I think if I was in that situation, or if I had to cut one of them, I think I might cut Bregman. Yeah, I think I would.
So the more I think about it, I didn't draft Bregman, but if I'm not going to cut a top 10 round player this early,
unless his name's Jose Abreu.
Well, yeah, I guess
he was like a 6th, 7th rounder.
He's about a pick 100, wasn't he?
Yeah, something like that. I thought I saw another one who's rostered around the same rate. I would cut Bregman right now for Rowdy Tellez. His roster rate in Yahoo's about the same as not Bregman, about the same as Henderson and Josh Young. So I would Tellez already has 9 homers. I think he's already shown his power is legit.
Yeah.
I think that he could hit for a similar average to Bregman going forward. Neither one of them are going to steal bases. Yeah, so there's a space there in shallow leagues where Bregman can be a cut.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We're over an hour already. Wow. Time flies on us.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, it does. Just quickly through the notes real quick. Jose Altuve could be back sooner than expected. Might begin a minor league rehab assignment next week. Mason Miller dealing with elbow tightness. Victor Robles went to the IL. Shame. He was actually quietly having a pretty decent start to the season. Nico Horner, we talked about. Hamstring tightness. Max Scherzer, we talked about. Missing tonight's start. Might pitch this weekend. Max Fried, we covered. Jacob deGrom, we covered. I think those are the main injury notes. Oh, George Springer out. He's got an illness today, so he's not going to play today. So
he has struggled with illness. He's a weird one. Like there's always something with George Springer, I find, over the years, right? Like he hasn't played in a full slate of games since, or even close to it, since 2016. There's just always something. This year, he's been sick for off and on for the Jays for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
and he's off to a really slow start this year.
Yeah,
offer Dustin May for him.
Exactly.
Hey, do it in a home league. Someone might bite on it. Dustin May's off to a good start, but that's the kind of he's off to a Schwarber-like start this year. George Springer is.
I can see it.
He will come around. I really believe that.
I do too. Ramon Urias is on the IL with a hamstring strain. We mentioned Oswald Peraza for the Yankees, which gives Volpe a little bit more rope, I think. I think that covers it there. Appreciate all the great comments in the forum there. I love all the interaction. I like that you guys are talking with each other as well as asking us questions. So thanks for those of you live stream with us. Thanks for those of you who now are listening on demand or after the fact on wherever you get your podcast. Big thanks to Fantasy Rival for their sponsorship. Always helps keep the bills paid there. So Rival Fantasy, let me get it right. Go to play.rivalfantasy.com/sign up and use that code RotoWire MLB. Please go patronize our sponsor if you're looking for a game like that. I think it's some good stuff there. We will have James Anderson tomorrow and guest to be named later on Thursday. Thanks for listening to RotoWire. Have a great day.